how's it going? I'm Swan. How are you guys doing? Welcome to today, Season 6, Episode 6. If you're wondering, we passed 1,000 episodes, and so we have to start putting C. We got C in there, so Season 6, Episode 6. Today I want to discuss One Nation Under God, but I need to make sure I'm not muted, and I do not think I'm muted. Citizenship is key, says Portal Finder, and this is exactly what we're going to talk about. And I don't know if Portal Finder knows where I'm going with this. I could be going somewhere else with this. You don't know. So let's find out. I think it's interesting that in 1954, Dwight Eisenhower had a program called Operation Wetback. Some of you guys are probably thinking, I just told a joke. This is not a joke. Operation Wetback was the largest year of expulsion of indigenous population from America. Migrant workers, basically. Before 1954, America could not have survived without a farming economy, a separate class necessary for the growth of America itself, and that all of that was built on the backs of Mexico, of Mexican labor. And Operation Wetback is not a slur. This is what Eisenhower said was necessary. And the exact same things that are happening now, hey everybody, the exact same things that are happening now were happening then. A massive rise in nationalism and in pride, a massive insistence on the superiority of Americans, and a deep, deep, deep paranoia about one's borders. The borders themselves, the fear themselves, the Hottentots of the time. Right now, we're apparently afraid of fentanyl, even though, as Rand Paul will tell you, Venezuela doesn't make fentanyl. And we'll murder people off the coast of the Caribbean because they could maybe, possibly, considerably, maybe, sort of, kind of, be making fentanyl. And you guys know that Big Pharma invented fentanyl, introduced it to the streets, overprescribes the shit out of it, doesn't wait for you to ask, gives it to you willingly, allows you to have your free sample. You go out on the street, and now you have a kind of Bitcoin, a fentanyl coin, a fentacoin. And when I was on grand jury for a year here in the wonderful state of North Carolina, it was our job to determine cases before they could be tried. So a lot of people maybe misunderstand a grand jury. A grand jury doesn't actually listen to the entire case. The grand jury is the jury before the jury. It's a pre-jury trial. And the cop comes in and makes his case to all of us seated. And then at the end, we vote on whether or not this thing should even go to trial. And almost all of the fentanyl cases that came in, literally every one of them, was some sort of domestic person. And before fentanyl, most of these cases were based on the procurement of the necessary chemicals that were needed to manufacture methamphetamines. And that the manufacturing of these things has always also been supplied by Big Pharma, that whether it be Robitussin or all the other medications that we've seen, that there's a very simple formula that can be extrapolated from the comfort of a white trash trailer. It doesn't require a lot of technical skill here. We'll get to white in a second. But that this is something that was inserted by a medical monopoly that could have simply outlawed fentanyl to begin with. That they were the ones that could have said, you know what, we're not going to put this on the street. This shit's highly addictive. But they didn't do that. They didn't do that. And when you start to ask yourself why, you may find out the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico is the reason. I'm hoping that at the end of all this, we can rename it the Gulf of Mexico, or the Gulf of Nahuatl would be another. I think people are going to have trouble saying Nahuatl, so Mexico would be even better. But, you know, that's got some pronunciation errors there, too. But the fact that we're looking at expanding truly comes from one source, and that is the fear of drugs. I showed you an episode about Nancy Reagan in showing you how a non-elected government official kicked off this whole thing. It's very easy for us to blame a controller, and some of you are now going to have to make a case for Nancy Reagan as being a Luciferian skull-fucking pedophile. And hey, it's probably a man, right? It's probably all those things. Probably Nancy's a dude. Sid Reagan is Nancy Reagan's real name. And she's got some junk in the trunk. And her whole move to say no to drugs was a Luciferian plot to destroy your sense of safety. Another option could be that the entire country is a living entity. And this living entity is sort of an egregore, a plasma octopus. And the plasma octopus has tentacles, and these tentacles will strangle its fellow citizens if it makes certain parts of it grow stronger, grow harder. No pun intended. And that the flow of blood into this organ and around different parts of it is purely stimulated by the restriction of people in other areas. And so we will pick certain groups to squeeze and to pummel, and we will pick other groups to covet and defend, and that those groups change depending on the vernacular. In 1954, under Eisenhower's Russia, it was the commies. The fear of communistic rule led to the deportation of 1.1 million people in the year 1954. During that summer, Under God was added to the Pledge of Allegiance, all this by Dwight Eisenhower, and the Christian Reich was here. And the Christian Reich's been here. It's been pumping its juices for a while now. But the thing that really makes this work is fear. And one of the best things you can do to instill fear is to elect someone like Trump. And it's not just Trump. Our system runs on fear because terror itself is the only way to extract more money out of the populace. And I think we lost a lot, my friends, during the Supremacy Clause. We lost a lot when we left our Articles of Confederation because we created a funnel network, a Amway of sorts, in which fear could be funneled into the federal government and utilized to control you. This is a long road. It's been a long way, and we will continue. That will continue. The fact that it used to be called Operation Wetback, I think you can go two ways with this. One, you can say, look how racist we were. Another you could say is, look how ubiquitous terms were. And it's harder to argue that the government itself was necessarily using like a derogatory term. Typically, a government will find something drier because it's looking for consensus. And so even though I wasn't there in 1954, it's probably safe in my mind to suggest that that maybe, just maybe, this even wasn't even considered an insult. Whoa! This wasn't even considered an insult. Forgive me, I hit the wrong button there. And that if it wasn't an insult then and it's an insult now, it means that we are growing. Something's growing. And I like to think that it's the sensitivity that was growing. I like to think that our awareness of what's happening is growing. And it's taken us a long time to get here. And this is one of the things that I wanted to discuss today. I wanted to take a little bit of a journey back to Rome, but I really don't want to hit the wrong button again. That's closer. But then it does this thing. Forgive me. Let me just real quickly click this button that says restart. It's not showing me that. Darn it. Oh, come on. I gotta be able to show stuff today. What do you mean you won't let me do that, man? Come on, man. SC Live present. SC Live present. Forgive me. Hope to get here soon. Restart capture. There we go. There we go. Where were we? Let me get back here. Live. Left. Whoops. There we go. We were going to, we'll get to this. Operation Wetback was an immigration law enforcement initiative under President Dwight D. Eisenhower, created by Joseph May Swing, a retired United States Army Lieutenant General and head of USI, United States Immigration and Naturalization Service, INS. ICE is INS. These are the same programs. The program was implemented in 1954. The U.S. Border Patrol packed Mexican immigrants into trucks when transporting them to the border for deportation during Operation Wetback. Again, 1.1 million. Here's the chart. You can see from 1940, we were only deporting maybe 12,000 people. And then we started. If you want to know what happens, I think we lost our farm economy. We started to modernize, and we started to say, "Hey, fuck those guys. Let's do some Christian nationalism." And so you did, and you saw the pinnacle peak. What a crash right after, right? That in the next 2 years, it complete crashed down to just 10% of what it used to be. And I don't know if you want to argue that means people felt like it was solved. It's more than likely that probably what's hopefully is going to happen with Trump is that people finally just kind of came to their senses. But I don't know if that's true. Senses is a really broad term. But I do think it's really interesting that at the peak of this, the same year and at the peak of this, the phrase under God was added to the Pledge of Allegiance on June 14th, 1954. And this was done via bill. Same president, same bill, same Operation Wetback was adding under God. So the irony is pretty ironic here. The under God idea and the idea of citizenship. Civis Romanus sum. The Romans conducted census every 5 years and called upon every man and his family to return to his place of birth to be counted in order to keep track of the population. Did you know the census was that old? There's a lot of things that made you a citizen in Rome. One of the important things that I want you to remember is that most of Rome, for most of its history, was not made up of citizens. It didn't have citizens. Most of the population was not a citizen, but these people still participated and were crucial to the strength and growth of Rome. It was an upwardly mobile system, as I like to tell you guys, and that this upwardly mobile system required different classifications of people the same way any caste system would. We have our own caste system. We pretend we don't. We have uneducated, educated. We have employed, unemployed. We have homeless. We have homed. We have blue collar. We have white collar. We have what we call the billionaire class, which none of us ever get to see. It turns out that if you're like making $5 million a year, you're in the, not only are you the 1%, you're the 0.01%. You are way the fuck up there. So the billionaire class, none of us really ever get to even look at that. I think the fact that we don't actually look at that class is more telling of what's happening, because it just seems harder to me that a billionaire would be spending so much time making sure that Congress has the right pedophile in office in order to give them tax breaks. You would just think that once you reached a billionaire, taxes aren't a thing. But if you are looking for a scapegoat, if you're looking for a system that allows you to periodically just expel 1.1 million of your fellow citizens into the world, billionaire's going to work, man. You're going to look for any kind of witch, any kind of pharmacos, any kind of scapegoat that will allow you to just maintain society. And one of those is citizens. That to develop the class of what's called citizen turned out to be a really popular form of mind control in Rome. And it truly added to the innovation of the city. And I need you to realize that not once was there a checkpoint in the gates of Rome that asked you to prove whether or not you were a citizen. The state would not have worked that way. A citizen was more based on have you been counted. And if you look at that symbolically, you could argue that a citizen means you have been given a number. These numbers are fancier because they have letters attached to them and consonants allow the limbic fruit of how we feel, our sentiment, to hang on their branch. And so when you reach citizenship, you would receive a tria nomina, a 3-tiered name. Marcus Tullius Cicero would be one. You have your, I'm probably going to say this wrong, praenomen, nomen, and cognomen. Your pre-name, your name, and your last name. These weren't exactly as we would say first, middle, last. It's not quite that way. In fact, it's almost like the cognomen is sort of our middle name now, because the praenomen is the first name, which we have, Marcus, for example. Nomen is the family clan, so this would be your last name. So Marcus Tullius would be your name, but then you would have this cognomen. This is basically your nickname. It's a personal way that you would be known. You could argue that this is how your name is pronounced, or you could argue it's your nickname, or you could even argue it's your middle name, because only someone who really close to you might Know your nickname and realize that you respond to that request. So what does this really mean? I think it shows that you are now choosing and forcing yourself to identify within the collective. I think that you could picture what prenomen, nomen, and cognomen are is a skewer. That you've been skewered from the top through your center and through the bottom itself. And you're skewered because you're attached to a ledger or a number. And this ledger is called the senses. If you were to participate in the benefits of Roman society, you would have to stop what you're doing if you're a traveler and return home, strictly so you could be counted in senses. It gave you a sense of authority, a sense of being, a sense of promise, a sense of being remembered. You didn't carry an ID card, but they carried your ID. They carried a written record of you. And you may be able to imagine how special that might make you feel in a world where virility is outside the gates, and those gates don't even really exist. It's more of just a perimeter. So outside the perimeters of Rome, you would lose the strength of your civilian name, that these three words may not be strong enough to carry you down the road and across the Rubicon into foreign territory. So in a way, Rome created a vessel of weakness where people could come and gather calories. A safety of sorts, if you could be counted, if you could be considered one of these. So if you entered into a household or into a clan or into a guild, that was your insertion into society as a citizen. You would maybe wear clothes that would reflect that you're a Roman citizen. But ultimately, the proof itself would be found in some sort of parchment or document that you may not necessarily carry. There's a few cases where if you're a military personnel, you might actually have some copper tablets or something really special to kind of give your passport is a gold card version, so to speak. And you and I have been taught for a long time that, hey man, you need to be a citizen, because if you're a citizen, you get all these advantages. And when you start to look at the advantages, you realize the advantages are you get to vote for one of two pedophiles. So you get to, the lesser of two pedophiles. That's who you're voting for. And you get to pay taxes. You get to do these things. And since you get to do these things, these are privileges. And we call them privileges. And I don't know why we call those things privileges. I think there's a little Stockholm syndrome there personally. But more importantly, what happens is it enters into a trauma state. See, everyone who's a citizen wants to feel better than everyone who's not a citizen. If you cannot at least feel better as a citizen than not a citizen, maybe people won't want to be citizens anymore. And if people undid the math, if someone like me started to unwrap what it meant to have a Social Security card, and you start to realize, wait, this actually has a lot of disadvantages. And then you start to come up with the idea of the beyonder. Yeah. A beyonder would be someone that would be born in a situation, in a family, in a patriarchy, dare I say, that did not need a Social Security number, that did not need a birth certificate. And that this undocumented person is not below the law, they are above the law. They are an Übermensch. They are an Übermensch precisely because they have never reduced themselves to a number. This is just a concept. I used to say that this is the ideal place for all of us, and then I grew more compassion. I grew more compassion for slavery itself, and that's very hard to do in this culture because people are going to say you're mean. If you start to look at how popular and how important slavery's been in every single country, Rome definitely one of them, you start to rethink the entire definition of parasitic relationship. Then you start seeing parasites in nature in a whole new light, and you start to realize maybe these things are like natural. Maybe natural-born parasite is just a normal thing. Maybe this normal thing would be required for you to survive. And I think then and only then can you even have enough compassion to look at undocumented worker and kind of feel jealous of that. I think that everyone deep down on a lower reptilian level is jealous of the undocumented. I can prove it because you remember what YouTube comments used to be like before anonymity was under attack. Before Facebook made you log in, you could say a lot more severe things easily. So you leaving the confines of the city of Rome would sort of allow you to pull off your tight-fitting underwear, let the boys run loose for a while and go feral for a few days. Become the jaguar psychopath and wander around the jungle and just start killing people. This lawless outlaw nature had a name. You were wolf-headed. This was a term that I think I tried to imply that this was set in Rome. It actually was set in Old England, and I apologize for steering you wrong there. But this concept of being wolf-like really does inspire intimidation. Everyone who's a citizen is intimidated by the wolf. They're so intimidated that they're willing to pay taxes and vote for the lesser of two pedophiles in order to protect themselves from it. So citizen becomes more of an instrument of the weak, not of the strong. And hey, weak's going to give us some great art. It's going to give us some great literature. Having weak plants is not a negativity. The same way as being undocumented may not necessarily be such a bad thing after all, because when you start to look at the immigration laws themselves, excuse me. I'll get there, sorry. I should have cleared these out. Sometimes I like to go back to stuff. Wait, this is the wrong thing. But it's the right thing. Where's my, here it is. Yeah, thank you. Crossing, see, I don't have an actual visual slide. Crossing, but think about it this way, guys. Think about it this way, please. When you consider what makes you illegal in this country, what makes an immigrant illegal here? You're going to be surprised by this. Maybe some of you won't. Crossing a border is illegal if you don't do it the right way, if you don't do it through permission. That's illegal. So that's an immigration violation, is because you crossed a border. Crossing a border with forged papers that make it look like it's legal, that's illegal. That's illegal. Number 3, crossing a border with papers that are legal but tell you that you have to leave at a certain day and you do not leave. That's illegal. So forging documents is illegal. Not obeying the documents is illegal. And crossing the border is illegal. I want you to really hear this, because this is a biggie. It is not illegal to just be here. It is not a crime in the United States to just exist. What is a crime is to declare that you do not live here and then to come here. That's what's illegal. The ICE is allowed to fight you under the auspice that you do not belong here. And the only way that they can violate your sanctity, your preservation of life, your habeas corpus, is if you and them can somehow prove or believe that you do not belong here, that your presence in this space has somehow been done illegally. How is that done illegally? Number 1, crossing a border without papers, without proper documentation, without the proper entryway through, without permission. That's illegal. So if you had no memory of how you got here, if you were on this place and there is no record, no admission of you that you came from somewhere else, you are not violating any laws here. It is a civil status that you have. And that civil status is kind of in this weird limbo. And I think that limbo world is about to close. I think in our lifetime, we're going to see this world close. It's going to close because the right is attacking nomadic, undocumented status. And the left is fine with it, honestly. Both sides feel that if I have to suffer under the citizenship of this place, that you must too. And that there are Americans who call themselves Americans, who call themselves citizens, who do not know that they think that you are illegal simply because you're here, but there's no law. And additionally, the Supreme Court has actually struck down any attempts at laws to suggest otherwise, to suggest that the term illegals is even real. So nomadic existence is already limited by the border itself. You can nomadically exist inside the United States. You can try that. But as you watch the state grow smarter and smarter, its desire to control and force you into citizenship is going to become stronger and stronger. And that's where we are. We are taught from a young age to celebrate citizenship. But there's really no reason to. The only thing you're really missing out on is you don't get to pay taxes, you don't get to vote. And when you look at what voting is, what are you losing exactly? Is it because you want to represent yourself in local government? Because go for it. I don't even know if you would have to prove that you have certain status to even serve in local government. I know for most states' governments and most federal governments, you're going to need that. Which means that's a citizen government. If it's a citizen government, that means it's not actually by and for the people. It's by and for the citizens. And I think if we were to have a revolution in this world, it would be to step away from that label citizen instead of embracing it. That if you want to see what's truly firing a one world government, what's truly pushing fascism, it would be a desire for a status of citizenship that allows you to feel better than those that don't have it. And once you have that, then you'd have a natural parade of people that would like to enforce the caste system the same way the untouchables try and exist in India right now. It's the same thing. In every Third Reich, every 1954, every time that something rises where we get afraid, that we get terrified, whether it be about drugs or commies or liberals, that you would expect a rise in a fascistic immigration policy leading to a mass expulsion of untouchables, the lowest caste system. You may say that this would be the reason why you would want to be a citizen, James. That if I am a citizen, I will no longer be able to be deported. And I want you to understand what Stockholm Syndrome is. I want you to get what it's like to find yourself flotsam and jetsam in water, being rescued by a prison ship. And the prison ship, you become a prisoner, but you feel freer as a result. This would be the closest thing that I think you could even fathom into why you would be so foolish into accepting this thing. Because you're smarter than this. Of course you are. So am I. And because we're smarter than this, there's no way this could be the case. There's no way this could be true. But it is. And it is because of that fear of drowning. And that fear of drowning used to be what it felt like to be alive. That you're every day waking up and going, my God, I'm alive, became untenable. You grew a distaste for that feeling so much that you decided you were drowning. And one of the things that convinced you were drowning is that so many other people around you were insisting that they were drowning. And they played, I'm drowning, I'm drowning. And they climbed onto the logs and they sat on the wetbacks, literally, that kept them dry long enough to formulate a policy that we are our own land and everything else is lost at sea. And if you're seeking identity, if you're seeking consciousness, and more importantly, if you have an addiction to community, you're going to fall for this same Stockholm Syndrome. You're going to want this same Stockholm Syndrome. I would argue it's actually better for you to go in and consider yourself a prisoner because it will allow you to align with society. It will allow you to join them and participate in their system. This is psychology. And I think it's probably the same thing that the only thing that could explain how the fuck Caesar could go into feral Germany and convince 1 million Gauls that they were now prisoners and that they needed to follow him hundreds of miles back into the city of Rome, where they will be tortured and humiliated and sold on the open market for meat and for labor. And that 1 million of those said, okay. They said, okay, the same way you said, I want to be a citizen. The same way you're like, let me find my passport because I think ICE is coming. Or we're going down the border. I need to make sure I have my documentation. And everyone will swear to you, no, we don't live in a country where you have to show your papers. But you do. You do have to show your papers. You do. There's a 100-mile encroachment inland from the ocean now. And that is a militarized border zone controlled by a federal power that supplants all states' rights. And inside of that federal power, there's a lower threshold on what they think might be an illegal. Someone who's violated, not being here, hear me out, someone who's violated crossing a border. The definition of border is mutable. The definition of border doesn't have to be a half-mile wide imaginary line separating one country from another. The definition of border could be a 100-mile wide imaginary line separating one country from another. And that definition is movable by every metric. It could be stretched in any way, even if it's revoked or not revoked. It could still be changed and used in certain ways simply because it's law, and law is just words. President Trump's proving that right now. Steve Bannon even said that these are words. And if you want to say that Trump can't have a third term, it's because you don't understand how words work. That the Constitution is words. It's a bunch of words. And when he says, I've got people working on that, I want you to imagine how easy it would be in Portland to build an ICE facility, intimidate some locals that you know won't like you, get a few windows broken, put up some boards, close down for 3 weeks, throw an completely over-the-top amount of pepper spray into the environment, hire a film crew on Saturday, by the way, as soon as the No Kings protest ends, to come and film this event in order to show how federal power is being encroached on and that the Supreme Court needs to step in and allow the president to send National Guard into domestic territory. I want to take a minute to show you why we're kind of fucked on this one. And the reason why we're kind of fucked has to do with Abraham Lincoln. Before I do, though, let me remind you that I don't even know if I got this out because I had some technical issues yesterday. Let me just say this. There's the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has looked at Oregon's case with ICE being there and gave Oregon a temporary restraining order, basically stopping the National Guard from being deployed to Oregon. That was overturned Wednesday. That was overturned on Monday. It was overturned on Monday, which I think, many think, I should say, that there's two restraining orders. The first was overturned Monday. It's probably, since the first was overturned, the second will be overturned. It's just a matter of bureaucracy. This seemed like it was in the can. The three judges that decided this case, the dissenting opinion requested that the larger panel of Ninth Circuit judges review this case, and it seems to be that that's going to happen, which means the Oregon case is still up in the air. I'm thinking that it will fail, and it will fail because of the supremacy clause, which I hope we'll get to here in a little bit. And that I don't want it to fail. I'm just telling you, I think it will fail. And that because it will fail, this basically allows Trump to form his own army and place it domestically. And if you have a domestic army in place, you can do things like shoot ordnance over I-5, blame the governor for wanting to shut down the freeway when you were just trying to have a Marine Corps birthday party, even though the Marine Corps birthday party is not till November 10th. And that you could just penalize every governor that wasn't pro-MAGA, to basically bully them with just publicity and the National Guard, and just make the situation worse and create basically a civil war. And once a civil war is established, you basically have all powers. You just need to get the country into Red Chief mode. Red Chief mode is an old tradition in Turtle Island. You have your white chief, you have your red chief. During peacetime, your white chief reigns. During wartime, you assign a red chief, and you send the red chief in. Orange Man, mad, is red chief. And Orange Man needs more people on his side. He's going to employ people that call themselves white men. And the white men are simply indigenous that don't know they're connected to the soil. That's why they're white. And that the moment you become indigenous, you start to see the power of being undocumented. You start to be jealous of the undocumented. And if you can afford jealousy, I think you can see a way out of this thing. If you can afford to foster jealousy for the undocumented, I really think there's a way out of this. The sovereign citizen movement that failed when it says, let me speak to your supervisor because they're appealing to authority, would actually find that the undocumented status is the way to go. And while they're running around paying Cal Washington and other people $6,000, or Andy Kaufman, who's going to tell you on a secret special course how to get yourself free, that what maybe you should be doing is looking into forced amnesia, to constantly be finding places inside the federal government where your name can be removed. It's actually easier than you think. And that really the thing that's putting you in the most danger is the fact that the government can prove you're a citizen. Your most stable position would be to be in this land and have no idea, anyone have any idea how you got here or how long you've been here. This is Grizzly Adams land. This is American philosophy land. This is Thoreau land. This is where you want to be. This is Emerson. This is Whitman. You see the forest for what it is, a jungle. You understand that the people around you that will later be called heroes were simply dictators. In 1977, the American Nazis fought for the right to march in Skokie, Illinois, and won. And in that same Illinois area, those same people are now sort of in charge. And not only are they in charge, but they are making things worse. I place this next to Abraham Lincoln because Abraham Lincoln is not considered a dictator. He's considered someone who saved the Union, and he saved the Union by violating habeas corpus. He saved the Union by jailing hundreds of newspaper reporters and publishers. He saved the Union by denying Maryland its democratic ability to secede from the Union. And we say save because the same Stockholm that convinced you that being a citizen is better and you're not a prisoner on this boat, that same Stockholm told you that Abraham Lincoln could never, ever, ever be considered a dictator, even though he looked at the Constitution as it is and said, I'm not going to use this. And what's interesting about this is that he didn't use that precisely because we left the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation were here before before we decided on a federal republic. And the Articles of Confederation have been shamed as much as the Wetbacks and even more as the Michigan. But the Articles of Confederacy were probably much more aligned to the original Turtle Island Iroquois Confederacy itself. And they had to be aligned because you weren't taking over a new land, you were moving into a land that already had a system. The Supremacy Clause was ratified with the U.S. Constitution in 1788. It's part of Article 6 and establishes that federal laws, treaties, and the Constitution itself are the supreme law of the land, taking precedence over conflicting state laws. This is a key change from the Articles of Confederacy, which lacked a clear provision for federal law supremacy. And I'm telling you that lack of a clear provision of federal law supremacy was the best thing we ever had. The Supremacy Clause was ratified in 1788. Told you that. It sure is okay, yeah, you know all that. What's interesting is that this was upheld and reinforced because of a fucking bank. McCulloch versus Maryland, a legal dispute. McCulloch versus Maryland, 1819 Supreme Court case that established the principle of implied powers of Congress and the supremacy of federal law over state law. Why? Because the state wanted to tax the federal bank. Brilliant. A state wanted to tax, Maryland, in fact, wanted to tax a federal bank. Hey, James, Maryland was trying to tax a federal entity, and they also were smacked down by Lincoln. Yes, you're right. You're right. Lincoln was a banker's president. And bankers' presidents get the biggest memorial at D.C. Guys, I'm not saying you need to hate Lincoln. Keep liking Lincoln. He's cool as fuck, right? He's got like a zombie video game. He's like chainsaw, got a cool hat, tall as fuck. You know, ornery. There's like movies about him. I want you to think about it like this, though. I'm not saying Lincoln even had a choice. I think dude's probably rock solid. I think that if you have a system that is flawed, and you have to tear up that system in order to preserve that system, I don't know if you're working for the good guys. I think you're more working for the egregore of the people. The fear of the people living on the boat is what you're working for. And I think if Lincoln would have been, maybe had more balls, I think if he would have had a little bit more political clout, keep in mind what we're going to call the Democrats was separated into three separate powers then. So there was a sort of a unity. Really, the only thing holding this together, hate to say this, was all the money being rushed into New York to fund militias, to give people boots, to give people shoes, to give people hats. Some of you won a horse. Some of your great-great-great-grandparents were like, yeah, I'll show up as be an ICE agent and I'll win a fucking horse for it. And some of you won that horse. And that it was bribery that forced us out of the Articles of Confederacy. And that bribery came from unification of a single party that decided we want to be the Unionites. We want to be the dudes that want to hold this together. And the only way we're going to hold this together is we have to put the freedom of press in jail. We have to eliminate the writ of habeas corpus. We have to destroy fucking Maryland. We will do anything we can because if we have a central bank, we now have a budget. We have a budget. We are now our own state. We're the uber state above all others. And this is simply complete contradiction of the Articles of Confederacy, which is supposed to be an experiment of states trying different things in different places and different times. But James, what about the slaves, James? Surely the country that had Operation Wetback had good intentions when they were trying to eliminate the slaves, James. And I say, who was that lady I was just talking? That's weird. I think it's like Hepburn. No, not Hepburn. It was, this it's showing you, right? Remember, Custer was at the Civil War for the surrender of the South, the end of all violence because of the racist South. And 3 weeks later, he's shooting Indians in Montana. So the good guys didn't win, guys. The good guys didn't win. It turns out that the guys that we call racist white hooded fucks were more integrated with the local Indian population. Fuck, I know. And dude, don't go there. Don't go there. Don't share this stream. Don't like this stream because if people find out about this, they're going to come for us next. They already do. They're going to come for us next because you're going to be one of them because you are trying to upturn this. Maybe being a citizen isn't so great. Maybe this federal supremacy clause is literally the exact opposite of every single thing we tried to fight for. Maybe this idea of a single federal bank was a horrible, horrible idea. Maybe the tribute and the potlatch sent from all the states into a central place would have to be earned by the federal state, the same way Chief Powhatan had to do it in Virginia. Powhatan is a word meaning those that live by the river. You've got hundreds of tribes that are distributed too far away to where you don't even have a network. The same thing happened around the swamp of Mexico City. All these Nahuatl tribes are spread out. And the Nahuatls, same for the states, decide which one of us has more snakes in their hair. Which one of us is more likely to enrage and bring pillage upon us. We will give them fruit. We will make them fruitcake. We're going to knit them a sweater. We're going to give them a basket. There's going to be a coupon book in there. It's going to have everything you need. It's going to have oranges. There's not going to be a grapefruit hiding, being secret, trying to be an orange. Because we're going to kiss the ass of snakes in hair. And that becomes the chieftain. He's basically another state. But he's the state that all the other states decide, you're sort of the psychopath here. Iroquois had the same. What was in the middle? Middle tribe. We will surround you. The violence must be contained within a circle. And we will build a civilization around this circle because we know the most violent is in the center. It's a maypole of violence. And the thing that the Articles of Confederacy did was assume that was going to happen. And the thing that destroyed the Articles of Confederacy was the illusion that was impossible. It was the illusion that even though the Union had to tear apart the Constitution right now, that if we could just tear it apart more, that all this is going to fix itself and everything's going to be fine in the end. And all we really did is establish the idea that we will run on fear. We will establish a tempo of authority, a templo of authority, a central place where we will compete for which thing is scarier. Is it the flood's coming to get us? Is it there's no rain and we're going to die of starvation? Or is the fear the terrorism of other nations, the terrorism of other war? And that as long as we agree that we are enslaved as citizens inside a central fear, that we can remain protected because all of us will compete for where our tax dollars go to prevent that fear and xenophobia and terrorism are Huitzilopochtli. They're on the right side of that triangle. So you're seeing a higher resolution exercise of that kind of fear, and it always looks like fascism. It always looks like fascism. Abraham Lincoln was the first fascist. Abraham Lincoln was the first dictator. George Washington was the first psychopath. George Washington was the first mass murderer. You take these things and you start to build a government around it, and you're going to have a strong-ass nation. And that strong-ass nation's chief export is going to be war. And that nation's strongest, largest employer is going to be the Department of Defense. And we have that now. And we are never looking back. This is not a, let's turn around. I don't think that's healthy. I think that watching Trump build a Thunderdome behind the White House right now is exactly what needs to happen, because what we need to embrace is that the snakes in hair is on purpose. The snakes in hair is built into this place. Operation Wetback literally just threw them in cages. Just threw them in cages and sent them back. Why? Because we're done with you. We're done with you now. Of course, we had a revitalization of agriculture, and guess what? The economy fucking tanked. You saw if you want to know why, probably the reason why we stopped doing that is, holy fuck, we need pickers. We need wetbacks. If we don't get more wetbacks, we're fucked. So this is an endless flux up and down. And it's the exercise of a group of fascists that are afraid, that are living on a flotilla. And that flotilla has abandoned the Articles of Confederacy and every other thing that I think really gave us more power and built what we have now. And I've had a hard time compassionating this. I'd rather end the stream right now and say this is the power of Confederacy. You gotta go back. But when you start to look at just how weak people are, and how many people are thriving under this Stockholm fear prison boat mentality, which is really, that's what citizenship is, then you kind of want it to drown. You kind of want that to drown. You kind of want that system to really, really fail horribly. And that you hope when it fails horribly, you hope in the drought that enough people will learn and that we can go, maybe we can make it this time 70 years. In a way, that's what 1955 was. Guys, we really fucked up. You got your one nation under God now, but can we stop deporting people and throwing them in cages? Can we stop that? And you do, and you hope that the memories of history last longer than 70 years, and they've lasted about 70. We made it about 70 years. And now we're learning that system again. So when you see Trump dumping AI poopy and Gavin Newsom dumping AI poopy, and basically they're both just shitting on the voters, the citizens, and people are cheering for this. Please know, people are cheering for this. That maybe it's time to stop looking at the politicians and start to look at the citizens themselves and say, why do you guys keep choosing that? What is it about that you keep going for? Because to me, it would be quite obvious that the ICE raids are just a Trojan horse. The Trump's Trojan horse would be, we need to deploy our own troops into the states. And we're going to have to shoehole and pigeonhole our way in there by declaring that a state is not allowing us to do something. We need a riot. We need a few things, and there you have it. This is the same thing as public safety. The president deems necessary that's not a law. That's not a regulation. That's a fascistic state given by a group of people that want to be afraid, that want a caste system, and want that caste system based on citizenship. If you could erase your citizenship, you would have more power in this country. And if you find someone else struggling for that, you see that truly that really is the only defense right now. That you cannot cross a border. That's the crime. The crime is not existing, not yet. It will be, my friends, but not yet. I'd like to thank you for watching today's show. Appreciate you very much. I'll be having a discussion tomorrow with Carmen. You guys maybe have seen us talk before. Looking forward to that, so hope you'll tune into that. And yeah, you guys have fun out there. Enjoy the Joy Americana and all that she has to offer. We'll see you next time on James Drew.